So tell me a little bit more about your latest Headlock project. I know you've already went past the Kickstarter goal and you're working to accumulate more. That's got to feel pretty damn good.
It does. I don't know. I think anybody that has ever done a Kickstarter will tell you that it's never it's never going to be enough. I mean, I don't necessarily use Kickstarter for fundraising per se, just because of the nature of what we do as an independent. Like I sort of use it as a distribution method. So for me, it's just it's more of just trying to get guys to pre-order the book through Kickstarter, because that helps us, sort of sell enough books to fund the creation of it. So it's a little bit different, I guess. I'm not so hung up on the funding as much as the number of people that we can get to pre-order the book in this method versus buying it off our web store or buying it at Comic-Con or, something of that nature.
You got a lot of big names involved in this one, as is tradition, it seems. Tell us who all is involved.
So this is by far the biggest lineup we've ever done. I think we've been pretty good about topping ourselves, but I don't know how we're going to top this one.
It's going to be tough.
It is. But we have Ric Flair and Mick Foley and Cody Rhodes and Kenny Omega doing short stories for the book. And this content, by the way, the wrestler-generated content, is only available through the Kickstarter book. If you buy a book from me at Comic-Con or off our web store or whatever, you get 5 chapters of Headlock with a Jerry Lawler cover on it. That's, it's a great book. But, since Kickstarter is the way that we want people to support us, we give the people who support us all of our best content. And then we also have Tugboat doing a piece of art and Lindsay Dorado doing a piece of art. And then, from the world of comics, we have Ed McGuinness, who's one of the main sort of creative forces behind Deadpool. Robbie Rodriguez is co-creator of Spider-Gwen and just did a gorgeous Finn Balor cover for the WWE comic. Raphael Albuquerque is one of my favorite artists. And Andy Belanger, he's the artist on Southern Cross for Image, but he's also an independent wrestler for IWS in Montreal. So we've really sort of cornered the market on wrestlers that do art. But it's a real murderer's row from front to back. Everybody's like an A-lister.
Explain to me the process of approaching a Ric Flair for something like this. He's not the type of guy that I would ever have involved or ever imagined to be involved in something like this or to have an interest in it. How do you go about that?
So, I do one of the other things that we do a lot of is we have a fairly large convention presence now. I initially conceived Headlocked because wrestling or comics had never done wrestling the right way. Well, Comic-Cons have never really done wrestling the right way either. Cole Cabana used to joke about Sad Wrestler Alley, and there's a bunch of old guys kind of leaning on their hands, sort of waiting to sign pictures and whatever. And one of the things we've tried to do with our convention presence is to just step up, make a space where wrestling fans feel welcome. And we've tried to bring in some bigger names, and we have partner with different vendors and have products for them to buy and such. Aside from Headlocked, we have art prints and we've shared space with WrestleCrate in the past and people who make masks and stuff. Just so there's a space that wrestling fans can come to. And then the cool thing about it is that when you're there, when you have all the wrestlers in one spot, other wrestlers invariably show up. Sting randomly came to showed up at our New York Comic-Con booth this year. Zack Ryder's usually walking around there, scoping out action figures and stuff. So, we just try to create a level of excitement there. So, I've had Rick at my booth a couple of times, and he's seen what we've done and seen the passion for what we've done, and he wanted to help out. So, we some of that is a process. When I started, a lot of the guys who like comics, they approached me, and a lot of people still do, honestly. A lot of the wrestlers that like comics find their way to my DMs. But some of the other guys they've done some shows with us, and they see they see how hard we work and our passion for what we're doing, and they want to help us. They want to help us grow too.
What type of growth have you seen in the series?
I mean, it's definitely catching. I mean, I think we've done a pretty good job of, establishing a brand, both through the books and through our convention presence. We have larger and larger names, we get, more people talking about us and stuff. And obviously the sales are there. I think the thing that what we've done, it's pretty cool. I mean, so we were sort of shunned by the comic book industry when we started because, it was a wrestling comic and people sort of, do wrestling fans even read and, ignoring the fact that there's been multiple New York Times best-selling wrestling biographies, but whichever, sometimes when people are in their bubble, they don't know.
Sure.
They don't know what they don't know, I guess. So, we built Headlocked without using the traditional comic book sort of apparatus. Like, we don't use comic book distribution. I use Kickstarter for that. We built our audience by going to wrestling shows and getting space at Comic Cons and, with partnering with wrestlers. So we sort of built a comic book without using comic books, which I think is really kind of amazing. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before. If we had, for our last book, with our pre-orders, with our Kickstarters and what we had pre-sold and everything, if we were in comics, we would have been like number 23 in the world in that month. We were ahead of like Deadpool. There's a Captain America book we were ahead of, and big heavy hitter names. For what we had done, and that was a year ago. So we've only gotten bigger since then. So it's been great. I mean, the wrestling community has been great. Wrestlers have been great. Everybody's really been super supportive of what we're doing, and I think they can see the passion in what we're doing.
It's kind of interesting the parallels that you're seeing in the comic book world that pro wrestling actually sees in the entertainment world, and how pro wrestling also sees that in the advertising world, because you get those stigmas there as well. The the redheaded stepchild of the entertainment industry, and like, do pro wrestling fans spend any money? That's why it's really confusing to me. Like, you hear about the lower ad rates on pro wrestling and stuff like that. Then you see something like WrestleMania weekend, and I'm like, people really question if wrestling fans spend money. There are 55, 60,000 of them here spending money every single day. Why do you think that is still in 2017, that those stigmas are still attached?
I mean, I just think it's the same type of thing. Like, say, you don't know what you don't know if you're in the bubble. I mean, I've had Hollywood people come to my booth at San Diego Comic-Con and be like, "Oh, this is really cool. Too bad they already made the wrestling movie." And I'll be like, "Well, it's a shame. It's a good thing that when Goodfellas was getting pitched around, nobody was like, hey, they already made the Mafia movie, or they already made that crime story."
There have been 200 boxing movies over the last
right
20 years.
And that's the struggle, though. I mean, I've had, one of the things that I like to do. I mean, I feel like we've sort of defied convention at every turn. I mean, I did an independent wrestling comic that's a drama in a genre or a medium that doesn't do a lot of just straight drama. I mean, usually it's horror, sci-fi, whatever, and we've been successful at it. And I'd like to eventually take it to television or cartoons or something of that nature. And I'd really like to do a late night cartoon, but I've had a number of wrestling personalities that have worked in Hollywood or whatever say that, you'll never get this project through, and so I don't know. I kind of take that as a challenge to a certain extent. No one's doing a late night dramatic cartoon, but nobody was doing a comic book drama either. So, I mean, I feel like that's sort of the next hurdle, so we just keep building our brand and trying to, make an imprint, that's sort of the Walking Dead model or the Preacher model or whatever, like they kept putting out content, and you just keep getting your name out there, and eventually people see that there's a value in bringing an established fan base to something like that. So that's what I always tell people, they'll be like, oh, if this was a movie, I'd watch it, or if this was a TV show, I'd watch it, but I don't really read comics. I'm like, well, that's how stuff gets made. And it's funny because, I mean, I think comics in general, I mean, if you get away from Marvel and DC, like the superhero stuff, I think comics is sort of on the vanguard of original storytelling. Mm-hmm. There's so many excellent comics that are being produced, by non-superhero companies. And not that the superhero stuff is bad, but it is what it is, But there's tons of original storytelling in comics, and I think that sometimes all the superhero stuff sort of obscures that's going on, sort of like WWE would obscure the Indies or Ring of Honor or something like that to sort of casual onlookers.
What do you make of WWE's animated content on the network? They have Camp WWE, and then they have the show where you have wrestlers telling stories, WWE Storytime.
I mean, to a certain extent, I feel like they're kind of stealing my gimmick, but it's okay. It's tough. I watched one episode of Camp WWE and I didn't really enjoy it. I know a lot of people liked it, but I don't know if they've done another season of it, so I can't say that it was super successful. It's tricky with wrestling fans. I mean, WWE has some of the largest, they have such brand strength that people and wrestling fans are kind of brand slaves. I mean, I think I listened to everybody scream and cry about the Divas Revolution, and they wanted women's wrestling, and Dave Prazak was giving everybody women's wrestling in 2005, and people are like, no, I don't want it there, I want it here. I'd rather wait 10 years until it shows up on this thing that I complain about every week, instead of supporting the person that's giving me what I want. So, well, it's a tough fight with people. So it's always probably the biggest hurdle to climb, in terms of just getting people to be open to new ideas and stuff.
What is your ultimate goal for Headlocked? I've talked to you, I think, 2 other times we've done interviews, and I can see the growth, and I see the way that you, like you said, it's going to be hard to top this group of talent that you have, at least as far as name value. It's pretty cool to see how far it's come in such a short time, even though I'm sure for you it doesn't seem like a short time. What's your end goal for this?
I mean, I just want to keep telling stories as long as I can. I have a regular job that pays my bills. I work 70 hours a week at a regular job, and then every weekend I'm out trying to, advance this further until, hopefully at some point it becomes a sustainable source of income for me. But right now, any money I make off of it, I just reinvest right back into the book. I just want to tell stories as long as people let me tell stories. And I think wrestling has such an amazing culture and subculture and history. You could tell this story forever. I mean, I can take my main character. I mean, I can take him to Japan. I can take him to Mexico. I can take him to the UK. There's all sorts of elements of history and culture and things that you can explore. I mean, you could tell any story with this book. Currently right now it's a coming of age story, but, as he comes of age, we'll be telling other types of stories. So as long as people support it, I mean, if I could write it for 10 years and don't make money and don't lose any money, I'd be a happy dude.
And finally, before we go, I wanted to ask you, what was your WrestleMania weekend presence like? I'm sure you had appearances and things like that.
Yeah, it was crazy. I unfortunately, I only got to watch. Well, I got to watch WrestleMania because there was nothing running against it. But I got to watch one wrestling match the entire weekend, which was Mike Quackenbush and Zack Sabre.
Nice.
Because I wasn't gonna miss that. But I was at WrestleCon I was at Wally Mania on Thursday night, connecting with a bunch of my old friends. And then Friday from 9 to 4, I was at WrestleCon, and then I was selling at Evolve right after that until midnight. And then the next day I did the same thing from 9 to 2, just behind a table slinging my wares. So it's unfortunate that I don't get to see as much wrestling as everybody else does. But we had a pretty fun WrestleMania party at Shane Helms' hotel room with a bunch of wrestlers and whatnot. So yeah, we had the Boogeyman was there, which was crazy, and I'd never met him. Trevor Lee and Andrew Everett and Jillian Hall and Winter and Eddie Edwards.
Who'd Shane Helms ever beat?
The Rock.
That guy. We do a weekly podcast with Shane Helms, and he's horrible. He's the worst.
Yes, yes. He's he's one of my better friends in the world. We text a lot. He likes a lot of the same things I like. He likes comics and wrestling and MMA, and we're both Washington Redskins fans. So we 16 weeks a year we share in each other's misery. But he's a good dude, and he was one of the first guys. He's done a ton for the book in terms of helping us get out there, and he wrote an incredible story. It's probably my favorite story that anybody's produced for the book.
He's a very creative dude.
He was actually, he was. The stories that we do vary. Some guys make things up. Some guys adapt personal experiences. The story that Shane and I put together, he was actually in a waiting room of a hospital waiting for a MRI on his neck, not knowing if he was going to be able to wrestle anymore. And I think the story that we did is pretty powerful, but I think when you understand the context behind it, it becomes even more powerful. It's one of my favorite stories. And we actually made a motion comic out of it and put it up on YouTube. It's called Headlocked Undefeated. And people can check that out. I know Shane was really proud of it. I love it as a story. I hope people give it a look. They can kind of get an idea what type of work we're putting out.
Well, I want to thank you so much. Of course, over at Fightful.com, we will have links to the Kickstarter as well as additional information. But I want to thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to check it out.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on. And I just want everybody to know, the best content is through the Kickstarter. So, all that stuff like Shane's story and whatever, that stuff was all available, just through Kickstarter. And, to give us a look, I think we do some good work, and, I hope people will help us grow some more.
Well, despite Shane's involvement, we will still ask people to check it out as well. I promise you. Shane didn't ruin the whole series.
No, not at all.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you again, and best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.